Welcome to the deep dive. I want you to imagine it is the year 410 AD.
Oh, man, what a time.
Right. The unthinkable has just happened. Rome, the eternal city, the invincible mistress of the world for like over 1,000 years, is burning.
Yeah.
The Goths have breached the walls, and civilization as they knew it just collapsed in on itself.
It was total chaos.
Complete chaos. And the population, specifically the pagan population, is absolutely panicking. I mean, they're looking for a scapegoat.
Naturally.
And they end up pointing their fingers at this relatively new religion, Christianity.
Right. The argument sweeping the streets was basically, that the old gods are angry because people abandoned their temples.
Like, this catastrophic destruction is just divine punishment for ignoring Jupiter and Mars.
Exactly. So today we're taking a stack of source material to unpack an absolute titan of historical text.
A massive text.
Oh, yeah. We're looking at excerpts from a 19th century translated masterpiece, St. Augustine's The City of God.
And the mission here is to discover why a collapsing empire blamed a new religion and how Augustine diagnosed a flaw in their society that perfectly mirrors our own today.
It really is a staggering moment in human history. I mean, the psychological blow to the Roman world was just absolute.
Because it wasn't just the people in the city, right?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
People who had never even been to Rome, people living provinces away, they felt the ground shift beneath their feet.
Wow.
The eternal empire was mortal after all. And, Augustine steps into this chaos not just to play defense for Christianity,
Right.
but to offer a completely radical structural diagnosis of what actually caused the collapse.
And his central argument is incredibly bold.
It really is. He argues Rome wasn't destroyed by a lack of religion. It was destroyed by a misplaced religion.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to understand how a society substitutes the state, or, ambition for deeper meaning, we first have to look at how Augustine dismantled the Romans' own mythological safety net.
Yeah, he doesn't mess around.
No, he doesn't start with lofty theology. He comes out swinging with hard, immediate historical facts about the invasion itself.
Right, he points to a glaring anomaly in the sack of Rome that everyone was just ignoring.
Which is what?
Well, during the invasion, the barbarian Goths actually spared anyone who fled into the Christian churches.
Wait, really?
Yeah, they used these massive basilicas as sanctuaries, and the barbarians actually respected that.
That is wild.
And Augustine highlights that this act of mercy was completely unheard of in the traditional custom of war of the ancient world.
The historical sources absolutely back him up on that, too. I mean, you look at ancient warfare, and the standard operating procedure was total annihilation.
Oh, completely.
Like, Roman generals and the Greek heroes they modeled themselves after, they had absolutely no problem dragging refugees away from pagan altars.
Just slaughtering them right inside the temples.
Exactly. The concept of sanctuary wasn't respected by the very gods the Romans were claiming would have saved them.
And he brings receipts, too. He points to the fall of Troy.
Right, which is a big deal for them.
Huge. The Romans traced their entire lineage back to Troy, and they worshipped the Trojan gods.
So Augustine basically asks, well, how did that work out for them?
Yeah, exactly. Troy had its gods, built temples to them, and it still fell completely to the Greeks.
Didn't the gods get stolen too?
Yes. The Trojan gods couldn't even protect themselves from being taken as war loot.
That is so embarrassing.
Augustine uses this sharp irony to point out that it wasn't the gods protecting the city, it was the city guards trying desperately to protect the statues of the gods.
It's such a brilliant framing. I mean, think about it like this. It's like paying a fortune for a premium home security system that has a documented public history of never stopping a single burglar.
Yeah.
Then, when you finally switch to a new system and your house gets robbed, you blame the new system.
While completely ignoring that your old system was literally useless.
Exactly. The pagans were blaming the only institution, the Christian churches, that actually provided any physical sanctuary during the sack.
And then he pushes the knife even deeper by bringing up Saguntum.
Oh, this story's brutal.
It is. Saguntum was a city in Spain that was fiercely, famously loyal to Rome and to the Roman gods.
Right.
When Hannibal besieged them, they refused to surrender out of pure loyalty to Rome. They held out for months.
And they starved.
They starved, they kept their treaties, they prayed to the gods, and they were ultimately slaughtered and burned to the ground.
While the Roman gods supposedly just sat back and watched.
Right. So Augustine's point is just devastating. He asks, if these gods were the great guardians of prosperity, Why did they let their most faithful, dedicated allies burn to ash?
It exposes a massive contradiction. And beyond just being physically useless in a military conflict, the sources emphasize a total moral bankruptcy.
Oh, definitely.
Augustine asks this really penetrating question, where were the moral laws of these gods?
That is where his critique really moves from history into philosophy. He looks at the civic religion of Rome and points out that the gods never issued commandments on how to live a virtuous, just life.
Right, they never told the citizens how to actually be good people.
No, instead, what these gods supposedly demanded were these obscene theatrical plays and bloody sacrifices.
Just massive public festivals celebrating their own mythical infidelities, rapes, and crimes.
Yeah, the gods were essentially demanding a cosmic reality TV show based on their own terrible behavior.
Which is incredibly hypocritical when you consider Roman law. Augustine points out that the very behaviors the gods demanded to be celebrated in the temples
Were behaviors a Roman magistrate would severely punish a citizen for in the streets.
exactly.
The civic religion offered no moral compass at all. It was just a transactional system to try and bribe powerful, volatile entities for earthly success.
Okay, but wait. So if these gods were objectively terrible at protecting them and gave them absolutely zero moral guidance, how did Rome conquer the known world?
That's the big question.
Right, what was actually fueling them? Because they didn't just survive, they thrived for a very long time. This is the paradox Augustine has to solve. What was their true religion, if not Jupiter and Mars?
Their true religion was themselves.
Wow.
Yeah, Augustine diagnoses that Rome was driven by a massive, all-consuming lust for domination. They essentially turned their own desires into deities.
How do you mean?
Well, they didn't just worship the traditional pantheon with, lightning bolts and tridents. They made abstract concepts like victory and felicity, which just means happiness or earthly success, into literal goddesses.
And they built magnificent temples to them.
Yes, they were worshiping the gifts rather than the giver. Rome was an empire fueled by this desperate, insatiable desire for human praise and earthly glory.
So they literally worship their own ambition.
Exactly.
That completely strips away the romantic PR of the Roman Republic. I mean, we are so used to the marble statues and the Stoic philosophy.
Yeah, the romanticized version.
But Augustine just exposes the raw mechanics of power underneath all of that. And there's this one quote from the text that just stops you in your tracks. It's the story of Alexander the Great and the captured pirate.
It's one of the most famous passages in the entire work. So, a pirate is captured and brought in chains before Alexander the Great, the master of the known world, right?
Right.
Alexander looks down at him and asks what he means by keeping hostile possession of the sea. Why is he harassing ships?
And the pirate's response is just incredible.
The pirate looks right back at the most powerful man on earth and answers with absolute bold pride. He says, "What thou meanest by seizing the whole earth."
Oh, man.
He basically says, because I do it with a petty ship, I am called a robber, whilst thou who dost it with a great fleet art styled emperor.
That is just incredible. It completely reframes the concept of empire. It's essentially just organized crime with better branding.
Yep. And Augustine uses this interaction to deliver a stinging foundational conclusion about human governance.
What does he say?
He writes, justice being taken away then, what are kingdoms but great robberies?
Okay, but let me push back on that, though, because I want to linger on this tension for a second. Didn't this intense drive for glory, this lust for domination, actually work on a practical level?
Well, the Romans certainly thought so.
Right, because if we look at the legacy of Rome, that ambition built the aqueducts that provided clean water. It built a legal system that forms the basis of Western law today. It built a sprawling civilization with thousands of miles of roads.
True.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Isn't ambition, even ruthless ambition, a net positive if it creates a stable, thriving society?
Well, you are echoing the exact defense the Romans used. They pointed to their roads and their grain shipments as proof of their righteousness.
Sure.
But Augustine forces us to look at the ledger. Yes, they built aqueducts. But who built them?
Slaves, mostly.
Exactly. Millions of enslaved people taken from conquered nations. The peace they established, the Pax Romana, was maintained through endless border wars, the crucifixion of dissidents, and a culture that watched people be slaughtered in the Colosseum for afternoon entertainment.
So the infrastructure was magnificent, but the soul of the society was rotting.
Precisely. He doesn't deny their achievements. He just questions the moral cost of those achievements.
Right.
And that brings us to the core thesis of his entire massive work, which is the division of humanity into what he calls two cities.
Okay, tell me about these two cities.
To answer the question of whether that ambition was worth it, Augustine looks at the extreme consequences of this lust for human praise, and he points to the famous Roman historical example of Brutus.
And just to clarify, this is the ancient Brutus, the one who helped found the Roman Republic by overthrowing the kings.
Well, not the guy who stabbed Julius Caesar centuries later.
Got it.
So, this Brutus discovered that his own teenage sons were part of a conspiracy against the new republic. And to prove his loyalty to the state, he ordered them to be executed.
Wow.
And he stood there and watched it happen.
And the terrifying thing isn't just that he did it, it's that the Romans celebrated him for it.
They revered him for it. It was considered the ultimate pinnacle act of Roman patriotism. But Augustine looks at this story and is horrified.
Because it's fundamentally unnatural.
Exactly. He says this is the tragedy of the earthly city. It perfectly illustrates a society that is completely ruled by the lust to rule.
So the earthly city loves itself.
It loves itself, and it seeks glory from men above all else. Brutus sacrificed his own flesh and blood, not for ultimate eternal justice, but for the praise of his fellow citizens and the preservation of his own political power structure.
He elevated the state above humanity itself.
Yeah, and he contrasts this earthly city with the city of God.
Which is what, exactly?
The city of God isn't Rome or Jerusalem or any physical nation state. It is a community of people across time who live by faith. They operate as strangers or pilgrims in the world.
So they have a totally different value system.
Completely. They don't seek glory from men, they seek glory in God. They value true justice and humility over domination and winning at all costs.
You know, to explain how a society slides into becoming that earthly city, the sources highlight a brilliant philosophical concept Augustine introduces, which is deficient causes.
Oh, this is such a good concept.
I really want to make sure we dig into this because it totally shifts how you view human behavior.
It is a profound psychological insight that was just revolutionary at the time. Augustine argues that evil isn't a standalone entity.
Right.
It's not like a dark substance you can put in a jar or a rival god fighting the good god. Evil is entirely a misdirected will. It's a deficient cause.
Let me make sure I'm wrapping my head around this mechanism. So evil isn't a dark cloud that possesses a person or a society. It's more like a cancer.
Okay.
It's just your own body's cells, which are normally good and necessary, mutating and over-prioritizing their own growth at the expense of the whole system.
I love that analogy.
So Rome's ambition was just a natural desire for security and success, but metastasizing and taking over the host.
That is a phenomenal way to look at it. Evil happens when a society or an individual takes a lesser good, like gold or career success, or the security of the state, and loves it to the detriment of a higher good.
Like ultimate truth or compassion or justice.
Exactly. The desire for a stable state isn't inherently evil, but elevating the state above human life or moral integrity, that misdirection of love, that metastasizing priority, that is where the evil lies.
It's what happens when you take something that is perfectly fine in moderation, like patriotism or public approval or even your own family success, and you elevate it into your ultimate purpose.
Right, it becomes your God.
And once it's your God, you will sacrifice everything else on its altar. Your ethics, your peace of mind, your relationships. Rome made the state their God, and it demanded endless blood.
Which naturally leads Augustine back to those pagan gods we started with.
Right, because there's a paradox here.
Yeah.
If this earthly city is so destructive and these pagan gods are just masks for human ambition, why were the Romans so incredibly attached to them?
Good question.
They didn't just passively accept them, they fought for them, they sacrificed to them. So Augustine argues they weren't just culturally stubborn, they were actually being manipulated.
We have to step into the ancient mindset here. Augustine engages in this fierce debate with the Platonist philosophers of his time, thinkers like Apuleius.
Okay.
Now, these philosophers are highly educated. They didn't believe the crass myths about Jupiter literally turning into a swan.
They intellectualized
They did. They claimed the universe was a tiered system. You had the pure ethereal gods way up high who were too perfect to ever touch the dirty material earth.
So they needed middlemen to handle the operations down here.
Exactly. The philosophers claimed there were demons, and they used this word in a neutral sense, meaning spirits in the air who acted as messengers between the pure gods and lowly humans.
Right.
They handled the prayers going up and the blessings coming down.
It's literally cosmic middle management.
Yes. But Augustine completely dismantles this intellectualization. He looks at the philosophers and says, look at what these so-called mediators actually demand from you to do their job.
Right, the reality of it.
They demand those obscene theatrical plays. They demand bloody animal sacrifices. They demand dark magical arts to compel them to work.
Wait, let me clarify something on behalf of anyone listening. Is Augustine saying the Roman gods didn't exist at all, like they were just figments of collective imagination? Or is he saying they did exist, but they were actually malicious entities running a massive cosmic protection racket on the Roman people?
He is absolutely arguing the latter.
Wow, really?
Yes, he acknowledges the spiritual reality of these entities, but he identifies them as malignant spirits. His logic is devastatingly simple. If these entities demand things that actively pollute the human soul, they aren't helping humans reach the divine.
They're keeping them trapped in the dirt.
Exactly.
They are feeding on the dysfunction. They aren't messengers, they are wardens.
Yes. The demons use the Romans' own lust for power, their pride, and their state worship against them.
So they're weaponizing their ambition.
They are. They encourage the Romans to worship the state and pursue endless wars because that very behavior keeps them alienated from true, peaceful communion with God. It's a closed loop of misery disguised as glory.
So what does this all mean? We've covered a lot of ground today. The fall of an empire, the failure of the old gods, the insatiable lust for domination, and this profound idea of misdirected love feeding societal decay.
Yeah, it's heavy stuff.
How do we take Augustine's 5th century diagnosis and apply it to the world you and I are walking around in today?
Well, we have to realize that Augustine isn't just giving a history lesson about men in togas.
Right.
He is diagnosing a universal, permanent human condition. His analysis is incredibly prophetic. Whenever a society or an individual strips away true spiritual or moral meaning, a vacuum is created.
And nature abhors a vacuum.
Exactly. And human beings, by our very nature, cannot tolerate that vacuum. We will inevitably always replace it with the worship of something lesser.
We just build new temples to new gods. I mean,
Yeah.
we might not sacrifice bulls to Jupiter anymore, but we absolutely create modern, secular versions of religion.
You see it everywhere once you put on Augustine's lenses. Look at the absolute worship of politics today.
Oh, yeah.
A political party or a specific ideology becomes the singular source of all truth and righteousness. If you belong to the party, you are saved. If you oppose it, you are evil.
Or look at the worship of celebrity. We track the lives, the breakups, and the opinions of famous people as if they're mythological figures on Mount Olympus whose lives somehow dictate our own value.
Or nationalism, where the state is elevated beyond any moral critique. If the state does it, it must be right, and anyone who questions the state is a heretic.
And we see it so clearly in these hyper-intense online tribes, too. Your collective identity demands complete ideological purity. You have to use the exact right words, hold the exact right opinions, and if you step out of line, you are excommunicated. I mean, we don't call it excommunication anymore, we call it being canceled, but the psychological mechanism is identical.
It's exactly the same.
Yeah.
It's a secular religion enforcing its boundaries.
Yeah.
And that is the exact dynamic Augustine was warning about. When the state, or your political tribe, or the pursuit of fame becomes your ultimate concern when it becomes your god, you are living firmly in the earthly city.
You were participating in that lust for domination.
Right. And just like it did for Rome, it might bring you temporary success. It might give you a fleeting feeling of belonging or power, but it ultimately leaves the soul polluted and trapped.
Because those lesser gods always demand sacrifices.
And those sacrifices end up damaging your humanity.
They demand you give up your inner peace for the sake of winning the argument online. They demand you sacrifice your relationships with your family just to win an election.
Or sacrifice your ethics to get the promotion. But Augustine is reminding us, across 16 centuries, that we don't have to live that way. We can choose the mindset of the city of God.
Right.
We can choose to value humility over domination. We can choose to pursue true justice rather than just seeking the applause of the crowd. And we can recognize that our ultimate citizenship, our ultimate worth, isn't tied to any shifting, temporary, earthly power structure.
That is a profound lens to view our own modern chaos through. And I want to leave you with one final thing to mull over as you go about your day.
Yeah.
Think back to Augustine's definition of a kingdom that operates without true justice. He asked, justice being taken away, then, what are kingdoms but great robberies?
Such a powerful quote.
If we apply that today, if we strip away the grand titles, The multi-million-dollar PR campaigns, the slick branding, and the fame from the modern institutions, the massive corporations, or the ideological tribes we dedicate so much of our precious time and energy to. How many of them are just great robberies in disguise? Are you giving your devotion to something that is quietly robbing you of your deeper purpose? Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the source material. We will catch you next time.